Hello, everyone. It's time once again for Catalog and Cocktails. It's your honest, no BS, non salesy conversation about enterprise data management with tasty beverages in hand. I'm Tim Gasper, longtime data nerd product guy at Data.World, joined in person here by Juan Cicada.
Hey, Tim, how are you doing?
I'm doing well.
All right. Well, it's Wednesday, middle of the week, end of the day. Well, no, wait. You see, that's how I have this on autopilot.
Yeah.
It's actually Thursday.
It's actually
We're live.
Thursday today.
This is the first time we're doing it not on Wednesday. So this is a historic moment, right? Something that's never happened before. And I am super excited because this guest today we have is somebody is talking about serendipity, talk about like what happens when you go to conferences and you meet with people. I was just randomly went to a conference in Sydney, and I randomly sat next at the table, and I sat next to the guest that we have today, Patrick Cuba, who is a Snowflake architect. He architects snowflakes because snowflakes are very unique. And we just hit it off. We met at the Data Eng Bites last year, and we realized that we just have so much kind of common interests and passions when it comes to data and knowledge, and finally get to have you on the podcast. Patrick, how are you doing? How's the future?
Well, up until a few moments ago, I thought it was 2 days ahead instead of just 1 day ahead. You know, you guys being on Wednesday and me on Friday. I thought that's impossible. But here we are. It's AI and Snowflake and everything's going wild. So maybe it is 2 days in the future. Who knows? Yeah, good. No, exactly as you said, Juan. And a big shout out to Data Eng Bites and Peter, who runs the whole conference, because it's a huge effort. One thing that Sydney does well, they do a lot of free conferences, but to get the quality of personnel to talk about data and to talk about technology, Peter and Data Eng Bites have made a huge effort, and it's always fun to go to. I've been going 2 years in a row now. Probably go again this year.
I hope so, because I'm planning to go there too.
Yeah. First time there, I was presenting. Second time, I was presenting again. And like you said, we met on the speakers dinner. That's it.
Yep.
Over some wine, which is great.
Which was the chat we had last week was on wine, but today with cocktails. So talking about cocktails and drinks. So what are we drinking? What are we toasting for?
Yeah, what are you drinking, Patrick? You got coffee or cocktail?
It's called Palau. It's a Brazilian coffee.
Ooh.
Oh, all right.
That sounds good.
All right. What are we drinking here?
So we have a Carajillo on the rocks.
There we go. Carajillo. This is one I've had a couple times here, which is the liquor of 43 with coffee in it. This is a great drink.
And this is the Diablo Margarita, which is a habanero infused margarita. And so we're here at Quince over on the lake in Austin, and pretty good cocktails here.
All right. Well,
cheers,
Patrick.
Cheers, Cuba.
Cheers.
Thank you for joining us from the future. So, all right. This is good. Okay.
That margarita, that looks good.
Yeah. Wish I could send one to you.
Okay. So our warm-up question today: what do vaults and graphs have in common?
Oh. I'll give you my 2 cents. So, and it's not just something that I see. A lot of data vault professionals or guys who specialize in data vaults and come across content like yours and like other professionals in the knowledge graph space, see these patterns and recognize them. Like, wait a minute, aren't we doing the same thing in Vault? And we are, but for a different purpose. So Data Vault looks out for the top-down view of an enterprise and says, okay, these are your business objects, and these are how they are related because they are recorded in business processes. Now, of course, we don't model the whole business process into a vault. We take what's necessary for our business case, but essentially you end up with nodes and edges, which looks like a graph. And then we add the historical context around it with satellite tables, which are essentially Vault's version of SCD type 2s. So from a base perspective, we're after the same thing: relationships and business objects. Where I think, and I think you're obviously much more attuned to to speak from the graph perspective, I think the two have a lot in common because we're after the same sort of things, what the business actually cares about, the business objects. It doesn't matter what industry you're in, whether it's healthcare, finance, manufacturing, we're always after what actually the business is focused on, the business objects, how that's managed in business capabilities, and how that's related or the relationships between the two, or more than just two business objects. Where the vault comes in is looking at the historical context. I think, and you can correct me where I am wrong. Graph and knowledge graphs come in and say, okay, we've got all this, we understand relationships, but what else can we do with it? Yeah.
So I will first say that I was hoping that you'd come up with a. This is my warm up question. I was hoping you'd come up with a funny answer, but you just died. You just went to the deep end with all this stuff.
I'm passionate about it. I'm passionate about it.
I know, I do that. But before we actually follow this, let me go quick parentheses. Do you got a funny answer for this? What's the difference or relationship between vaults and graphs? What do they have in common?
No, have you talked to like ChatGPT and
I did.
Does it have like a funny answer? All right, just give us the punchline.
It had multiple, but here's one that I like. It's like,
Okay.
Vaults are like secret vaults, like password managers, and it actually said data vault modeling are about controlling access and protecting critical assets. Graphs are about modeling knowledge, enabling inferencing, and making connections. So they serve complementary roles in managing complex and valuable information. I know that's what ChatGPT I gave it. But
That's kind of a serious answer.
I was
right?
a serious answer. I was hoping something.
It's kind of a serious answer. It's also not right, but anyway.
I know. Give me a fun. Let's see what it says in the meantime. All right, but in the meantime, I'll later on come back.
Maybe
to
the funny joke version of this is data vaults and knowledge graphs have in common is that it's a great way to confuse the uninitiated. What are you talking about? Which is actually a great segue for this whole conversation today. Is let's bring a little illumination as to what we're talking about here.
So
right?
okay, so the title of this episode and what I want to talk about is data modeling, data vault, knowledge graphs. Like there's so much stuff in common here. So the honest no BS. How do what are all these things and how do they combine and how should people start thinking about this?
Well, I mean, I looked at the title and we spoke about the title of this call and everything, and it's vault and knowledge graphs. But I think it's really like data modeling in general, right? Like if you've got a data landscape that isn't managed or isn't modeled properly around those entities and so on, and you use that to feed your knowledge graph, how useful is your knowledge graph? If it's based on wrong data. So to me, like the question goes further than just data vault and data modeling. It's like, well, guys, what are the practices that we're putting in that make sure that we get the right results? And efficiently and simply. Because to me, there's a thing, great article that I came across a few years ago. And it's actually, I found it on the New South Wales education site, so it's in school, and it's called cognitive load, right? Are you familiar with it? It's like how much can you keep in your brain from learning stuff all the time? It's impossible. It's the amount of knowledge out there is just too much to get into one setting. So the point of having that article in the education website is to lay the foundation of how to teach concepts to the students. And one thing that they stuck to is say, look, the advice to teach new concepts to people is always stick on like 3 or 4 core concepts and then build everything out after that, right? Which to me is like, okay, when you speak about data modeling and just the practice of data architecture, what are the core things we need to get right to set as a base for everything? Because I work for Snowflake and I work with customers who perhaps have huge workloads, giant queries running, and we spoke just before this call, a query that runs for 2 days, and the only reason it stopped running is because it had a timeout parameter. It said stop running. Said, well, why are you running queries for 2 days that has no result? If you just stuck to the basics, for us, and I think that's the big commonality between knowledge graphs and data vaults is, what are the entities I'm describing? What are they? How do I find them? What are they related to? What's the transactions, the business events that brought them together? And what's the descriptive detail about it? And that's it. If you have the core base like that, and you stick to, a patented approach of bringing that data in, which Vault happens to do. Kimball model does the same thing. Even other modeling techniques are still based on business entities, just have a different way of applying it. Whereas, that extreme example, I was seeing guys who were really happy they got DBT and just started creating models everywhere. How do you manage that? How do you catalog that? How do you find what you're after? And how is it that maybe two or more different analysts or modelers went after the same data and ended up with two different answers? That's the big challenge as well, I think.
Yeah. No, I think this is a good tee up and setup here around this idea of the importance of modeling around what is understandable and actionable and drives impact for the business, right? Which you mentioned earlier is all about the business objects. And you mentioned this idea of cognitive load, core concepts. Data Vault, you've mentioned that a few times now. I think some people who are listening to this podcast are probably pretty familiar with that concept, but
or not,
or maybe they think they are, but maybe they aren't actually. And then I would say there's probably a lot of folks who are like, I don't really know what that is. Do you think you could explain a little bit more, like what is a data vault architecture, and how does that compare to some other architectures, and why is it valuable?
So data vault's not without its challenges, but it also is with its benefits. I think. One thing to understand about Data Vault is it is that layer of bringing your polyglot data sources into something that's structured into a pattern-based model, right? One of the challenges with getting that idea across is, if you go into a prospect or a customer and they decide, okay, we want to go Data Vault, but why do we want to do it? It's like, well, you tell me, why have you chosen this in the first place?
Yeah.
And one of the things I like to say about Data Vault, or at least to explain how it works or what's the benefits of it, right, is that not to call it a data modeling approach at all, right? And I recall I was in a breakfast in San Francisco last year at Summit. And on the right-hand side, I had a guy who's a data architect, data modeler. He says, I want to do Data Vault. On the left-hand side, I had a guy who's a data engineer. He's like, I still don't see the benefit. Why are we doing this? I mean, what's the point of creating all these table structures, right? And at the end of the breakfast and everything, what we landed at is like, you can't do a Data Vault alone, because it should be top-down, enterprise vision. What are my business objects again? What are my relationships? What am I bringing together? It really doesn't matter where the data sources come from. It could be semi-structured, could be unstructured, could be structured, could be SAP, could be whatever. But it brings into those common table structures for Vault. Hubs, which are business objects, links, which are relationships, and then satellites, which are the descriptive attributes historized. And at the end of it, the data engineer said, so what I'm really doing here is just data mapping. Exactly. Bring all your descriptive attributes into the satellite tables, because we want that history, and you could map those things to your common use cases that you use in AI and ML. For example, we layer a data vault into two layers: a raw vault and a business vault. And a business vault is sparsely modeled. So both are hubs, links, and satellites, or at least the raw vault is hubs. But you can still use the same business vault satellite structure to build something like a feature table. Like you've taken your raw data in whatever format it is. It's like, it needs curation, it needs to be cleaned up and everything. But you then take your logic, which turns your raw data, joins or whatever it is, into features and persist that as a business vault satellite. So now you have this structure that you can use for training models and reusing for multiple use cases in your enterprise architecture.
So okay, I really love how you describe like the basics. And this is let's actually step back for a second and forget about data vault and all these things and knowledge graph, just like the basics here. Business entities, like your core concepts, the core things that exist in your organization, and then the relationships between them. And then I think the next step that adds is you want all the attributes, all the things that describe those business entities, and then also you want to think about them, keep track of it historically. And I think what now what I understand what Data Vault really is leads here so very well is that you keep track of all of these the historic aspects of it, and I think by having this notion of the history of all these things in satellites, I think that's a huge benefit and value of that. But but all this is to say is like this is super simple, right? Business entities and relationships, but you said something before, which is like you can't do it alone. You have to have that knowledge about the business, meaning it has to have some input from the top down. And then when we look at when you don't do, I'm actually going to say data modeling. If you do data modeling, it's because you are defining your business entities, the relationships. And if you don't define business entities and relationships, I'm going to say you do crappy data modeling.
Yes.
And so therefore, if you are just
I'm agreeing so far.
Yeah, if you've not, I think we're gonna agree with everything I'm saying. I'm just trying to kind of let's get some terminology aligned here.
Yeah.
If you start putting data together only from the bottoms up, without any context of the business entities relationships, then you are just putting data together to satisfy some particular question, report, or whatever. Which, hey, you're answering the need that somebody had, and good for you, right? At least that was the ultimate task. But then that's the stuff that gets repeated over and over again, and that's where all the logic happens, and people like are not thinking about this in a reusable manner. And therefore, that's why we just go off and keep doing the same thing over and over again without even realizing that we're repeating our work. But our sign of success is I answer that person's question. Like now we're therefore data driven because we use data to give it to somebody that they take a decision. So anyways, all this is to say is like my whole little rant here is like you said the word top down with business entities, and I agree with that. But we do see people doing this bottoms up, and hey, I'm going to throw out here DBT, but there's nothing. I don't want to be the same.
Back of my mind too.
Yeah, but it's like DBT has been driving it, just being able to go drive and do things with data to go drive those answers without the top down kind of injection from the top down, all this business entity. That's the DBT approach. That is like
you can maybe get to value quickly, but you're probably repeating yourself a bunch. That's why you end up with companies that have 1,700 DBT pipelines and things like
exactly.
that. Right?
Right. So, but then because you have to move fast,
what I've seen.
but then it's finding this balance. Anyways, I'm going off a rant over here. But anyways,
no, we are. That's why we have cocktails. So you're like, why are they doing this? But as you're saying that, and I'll plug in the same conference name again, Data Inch Bytes, because 2 years ago I was also invited to Data Vault UK conference, right, to speak about data modeling, which I thought great. Very short turnaround time because they wanted me to keynotes. Like, okay, I'm going to do a different type of presentation. But luckily for me, 2 weeks before that conference, I was at Data Inch Bytes, and I spent the day there, mingling with engineers and everything. And there were a couple of themes that I was keep hearing over and over again. And by the way, one of the guys there said, yeah, I managed 10,000 DBT models. I'm like, what? It's great. It's great for consumption-based platforms like Snowflake, right? It's like, yeah, go for it. But how are you managing this? How is it that that you're keeping track of all the model outputs, that you're not having these competing answers coming up from your data. How is it possible that you're managing all of this? And more recently, you see in the market that DBT, I think about a year ago or maybe longer, released their semantic model that sits on top of the DBT models. I mean, to me, what is that? Unless you've actually dealt with the core data processing or meaning of the data itself, that semantic model is nothing more than a band-aid. You're just covering.
That's an interesting perspective.
Okay, expand more on this, on the semantic layer being a band-aid. I got some thoughts, but I want to see if you're going to hit where I'm heading in my head. Go deeper into this.
Well, I mean, what's the purpose of the semantic model? Now, in the industry or in our there's more than one perspective. For the longest time, we see semantic models being developed so that they can support dashboards and BI tools and so on. So basically, consolidating what's underneath into a model of dimensions, time dimensions, and metrics and so on. So, okay, well, that sounds like a Kimball model, to be honest, facts and dimensions. So now we've created this layer on top of it. And the first time I encountered this sort of thinking or this technology was when I was still a SaaS professional, SAS, right? And we called it Information Map Studio. So basically take these data sets and say, all right, this is related to that, but underneath it's still doing an SQL view, right? So, okay, now we've created this single layer where we can plug in our, what was it called? Web Report Studio. That's what it is in SaaS. But basically all the BI tools sit on top of this. It says, all right, this is how you get to these metrics and this is how you get to the semantics. All right, great. Now you've covered all this data landscape with this sort of, let's say, firewall of a semantic model. All right. Now that if you've created this semantic model, does it fit every use case? Oh, no, we need another semantic model. Okay. Now we're starting to get into the space of, aren't we also vertically replicating what's happening underneath on the platform with all these analytic models and stories? So it's in a way, of course, it's great for data platforms and consumption-based architecture. But the other way, you're starting to replicate the same problems that you actually had underneath, and not dealing with the core problem in the first place. Is what are my descriptive attributes? What's the single version of the truth? I think semantic models should be there, but they also should be used with the same rigor or the same due diligence as data modeling in general.
Okay, so I think I agree with everything you said. Let me expand on this and see where we go on. Okay, and this is a shout out. This morning I was texting with Veronica Durgan, a former also podcast guest, and we've had a couple of conversations together and talking about semantic layers and all these things. And first of all, I think that there's an evolution of what we're calling semantic layers, ontologies. All this is just data. This is all, you zoom out, it's all just data modeling. So there's like really nothing new here. Just good old fashioned data modeling. Actually, people should go read just traditional the ER diagrams and just like even read Peter Chen's original article from the 70s, 80s. Okay, so the notion of these semantic layers that we see today, and all these vendors doing semantic layers, they are directly tied to BI, to dashboards. And as you mentioned, they're directly tied to just the Kimball model, right? It's just facts and dimension tables. So what we're seeing a lot today is these semantic layers, either the semantic layer companies for all these existing tools, like DBT and even Snowflake with their semantic layer and so forth. They're just saying, oh, you have data already in your database. I'm going to put this semantic layer on top of it to kind of map it to the stuff that's already there, because what you put over there has crappy names, because I don't know what's supposed to be. It doesn't have a description, a comment, right? It's just kind of, as you call it, that's why I agree it's a band-aid. Mm-hmm. And then, but it still took 10,000 models to go build that thing, right? So you didn't really fix anything. You just put that band-aid over there. So I completely agree. I think that's kind of my interpretation. It looks like we're in agreement on.
I read a story. There's a good analogy. Well, I think it is. A Potemkin village. You familiar with it?
With what?
Potemkin village?
Potemkin village.
No.
I've heard the name, but I
No,
don't know more of the details. So go for it.
So it's I can't remember exactly the details per se, but essentially there was a military general 100 or something years ago who conquered, I think, some region in the Middle East, and the princess of Russia or something was going to do a tour of everything. And just to show progress and that everything's working well, they put up fake villages. So that when she was touring, it's like everything's okay, everything looking good. And I feel like semantic layers are becoming that Potemkin village where it's masking what's happening underneath. You know, like everything's fine. Look, your metrics are all there. There's nothing wrong.
This is
This is reflecting all the technical debt that it took to get there. You know.
Okay, so let me not be so harsh, because there's two things. One, are we accomplishing the goal? And another way is thinking about it, are we accomplishing it efficiently? And I would argue that so you built your thousands of models and all that stuff, and you took all these things, and it takes too much time, and like all these people, and like and you go in and you're like, come on, like we could have done this so better, whatever. But hey, they got it done, and it's working, and and they have the observability, and they know if something breaks, they'll be able to go fix it, and they know exactly where it broke, and they can fix that stuff. We got it. People are under so much pressure, have so much shit to go done. Like they get their stuff done. I'm like, you got this shit done. Good for you. All right. And there are reasons why they had to go through that stuff and why it doesn't look that great. From like you saying, wow, I could have done that better. Always in hindsight, 2020. Okay.
Oh, no. I'm old enough to make my own mistakes and realize that people are going to look at what I did and like, wait a minute, why have you done this? Why have you done it this way?
Okay.
100%. I'm with that. When I see something that's like that in that box, it's like, man, what was this guy thinking? I could never know. I could never.
You don't know
what they were under, and it doesn't matter really, because
you know
what I'm asking is just let's fix it. Let's not linger on the past. Yeah, let's get this shit done.
Okay, so now, but what's happening right now is that we've got to the point where this stuff is working they built these stuff usually for dashboards, right? For BI reports and so forth. But now what we want, the reason why we're investing more in these semantics is because we're saying, oh, we want AI to go understand this, specifically LLMs to go understand this. We want the text to SQL stuff to go do this, and we need the semantics. And the data at its endpoint is not semantic enough. So let's put this, what we're calling right now, this quote unquote Band-Aid on top, which actually is helping and it actually works. So then if you zoom out saying, I got all this shit done and it works. So is it really a Band-Aid or not?
Well, even more than it works.
It can be used as a Band-Aid, right? Yeah. I'm not saying get rid of semantic models. No.
I know. I'm still going to keep going because I think I'm not saying that we're like let's not. It's just we're done and perfect. I'll continue with my thought, but go ahead.
Well, I think the thing I want to add here is if you have the semantic model, and okay, that helps, right? Because you're kind of creating a layer on top, but you're just kind of brushing all the other stuff underneath the carpet. Isn't that the hard part, though? Like to actually go change pipelines after you've built them and change data warehouses after you've already built them. That's hard.
Yeah.
Right?
So I think what's going to happen, and here's where I think, and this is kind of the evolution, is we have these semantic layers right now, which is on top of these Kimball or Ross models, right? These fact and dimension tables, which are just for dashboards. So we're building these things to clean up and kind of add more semantics such that we can do BI, now chat with our data specifically on these dashboards. But, and this is what I'm going to call semantic layer 1.0, right? Which is like, has been going on for so long. Like the semantic layers that we're seeing people doing today, the semantic layers that people, even from business shopping and stuff, it's still effectively the same type of thing.
Yep.
Now, the evolution of what's coming up next is that semantic layer should be more than just my fact and dimension tables for BI reporting. It should be for any type of data that I have modeled in my relational database. Don't tell me that if I need to go do if I want to use a semantic layer for this chat stuff, I need to then create fact and dimension tables. Like, no, that should not be the case. And that's where I think the evolution goes in this 2.0. So that's one thing, is that it should be modeling over anything. Second, it's not just about structured relational databases that you're doing aggregation about. It should be about any type of data, meaning any structured data, documents, text, entity extraction. You're doing all that stuff. And so therefore, you're telling me that then I have to do entity extraction, they go put it inside of my fact dimension table to no. So I think this is the evolution that's going to happen. So we're going to have what we're seeing, the semantic layers today are about just for BI reporting. Really, I want to do chat with my data, which is like extend my current capabilities inside of my dashboard. That's the obvious thing to go do next. But we're very quickly realizing I want to do way more than that. And you're telling me that I have to go turn my data into a fact dimension table? Like that's not gonna fly.
No, 100%. I think that's on point. Like Snowflake as a product is doing that already. I don't know if you saw the acquisition announcement last year with Datavoto. That's intended to bring in unstructured, semi-structured, structured data into a single place where you can find it through things like Cortex AI and stuff. However, although it's really good to find documents in your Google Drive that are related to your business and answers a question, and your AI models finds it all like a rag or something. We still need some sort of curation, saying, okay, you found this, you're actually telling us about this data, but is it right? And it goes back to earlier point on this podcast. Is like, well, you still need that curation layer, that wisdom, that triangle where you got data, information. Now we got all this information. Now we need to turn it into knowledge. Now we still need that wisdom to say, actually, this is correct. I think semantic models go a long way to doing it. But there needs to, let's not call it a bottleneck, because it feels like, okay, if you're doing curation, you're going to need some eyes on it, and how do we get to business value quickly enough if we've got this person in the middle who has to curate everything? That, I think, is also then part of the next step, is how do you automate that? And things like agentic AIs, I think, is heading toward.
So one more thing I want to add to this, because I think what we're talking here is kind of where semantic models today. Is it like a band-aid or not? We can make arguments that it is, or we just have to go do that. Then my next comment about how it's evolving, let's call it semantic layer 2.0, which is good about any type of data. And I think that's specifically that's where knowledge graphs are really great, because you can connect anything. But one other point is, I believe, and I'm betting, and I'm pushing, because this is my passion, this is my career basically, is we are now at a point where people are saying, oh, I see the value of the semantics. So let me go do that from the beginning. Let me go invest in that early on, such that I don't have to end up doing thousands of different models and pipelines. And so this is what I truly hope, is that we're entering a world where people are saying, oh, yeah, that thing was a band-aid and that actually helped all this stuff. And by the way, if I would have done these things early on, I wouldn't need that band-aid later on. But then all that shit that I did before can be done more efficiently. I don't have to repeat myself, right? We have the dry notion, right? Don't repeat yourself. Like, oh, these are good things. Let's go. Then it aligns with the whole push left kind of moment, shift left moment.
I was thinking the same thing, shift left.
But I'm really hoping that's happening. That will happen. And I think this is kind of this is the start for that. I don't know. What do you think?
But at the same,
go ahead. Go ahead. Yeah.
Well, I mean, at the same time, who has the time for it, right? Like, you've got people sitting in the front end who are developing these apps to solve business problems, not just solve, but automate what the business wants to do. Either you buy it off the shelf, or you build it in house. And I love the way Chad Sanderson puts it. Like, the guys who are upstream have no idea how the people downstream are using their data. So they're not, their prerogative is not, let me emit high quality data. I have no idea what you want to use, and that's why, and I think that's why he's pushing for the shift left way of thinking and promoting data contracts as a first class object.
Right.
Citizen.
Because then you're making it clear what the expectations actually are that you need to meet for the downstream use cases, the business use cases, right? Ideally.
Yeah.
So maybe to kind of tie back, I think what we're saying here, and I'm curious if this is, before we talk about like how we fix it, it sounds like we're saying, okay, semantics, super important. The business objects, the relationships, super important. Easy to overlook if you're just doing a bottoms up kind of organic, efficiency optimized approach to just building out your data, and look at the largest legacy companies out there and the morass they often find themselves in, right? Semantics are important. Semantic layers are good step. They're a band-aid, though. They're kind of like at the end, at the very end. It's like shift right. It's the opposite of the shift left approach, right? It's like, okay, let me add something at the end of this pipeline, right? So the answer is we need to adjust the pipelines. We need to adjust the architecture. We actually need to, you might have built the roads the wrong way. And now the city's gotten really populated and the roads are in the wrong places and the zoning laws are all wrong, right? Okay, you need to reconstruct here.
Fantastic
right?
analogy.
And
Keep going,
but the problem is that's hard work. Who's going to do
Absolutely.
that work? You know, you got to hire 100 data architects. I don't know, right? Maybe not, right? So like it's that's challenging.
Well,
so is that
okay.
is that kind of, is this right? Is this where we are?
Juan, you've been to Sydney. You can see all the construction going on. Now, if you go to I don't know, a city that doesn't have so much population concentrated in the CBD, it's so easy to build a new freeway, a new highway, or new infrastructure, because there's nothing that you have to consider on the outside to build this improvement. So Sydney, I think, started all this infrastructure changes maybe 3-4 years ago, but it's taken a long time. And why? Because you have all this traffic going through the city and you can't disrupt the business that they're doing, that they have to go to the south of the city or the north of the city or go through the harbor. You have to construct these things in parallel with what's bringing in the business value for the city. And that is hard.
This is a fantastic analogy, Tim. And I think to continue on it, it's like we realize, oh shit, we could have done better. And by the way, if I draw it on paper, we could tear this building down and put this road over here. That's how we can make this stuff better. Okay, yeah, technically, theoretically, yeah, we can do that. Are we going to fucking do that or not?
But that building is really important.
I know,
that's
exactly.
used for this
Okay,
thing. And
so, but then, the way I'm envisioning this is that we're not going to fix the old stuff that's working and it's just kind of fucked up. No. What we're hopefully going to do is learn from this. So if we're going to start from scratch, because guess what? We're always starting from scratch, new and newer things. We're going to do those things with the lessons learned.
Mm-hmm.
And this is where I'm hoping that we're going to have the mentality now saying, oh, I should now, you're telling me, I now learn that if I would have invested in this semantics and knowledge, which, by the way, I've invested in it afterwards and I see the value already. And I'm realizing that if I would have invested early on, I would have gotten much more value, would have been faster, would less expensive. It's like, okay, but I'm not going to go do that for what I have now. Hey, but for these new projects, I'm probably going to start doing that. And I think that's what my hope is. And I think this is where we're seeing data. So think about it is like going forward, hopefully things like modeling things in Data Vault, right? Thinking about knowledge graphs and ontology is something that people are thinking about from the beginning and not as an after effect. That's what my hope is. And I hope, and people listening, and this is why we're having these conversations. So people are listening, they're like hopefully realizing, or actually I want you to push back on this.
Not Absolutely. Just from the beginning, but as you go.
From the beginning, continuously, yes.
So I mean, my job title is solution architect Snowflake, right? But I happen to know how to do data vaults really well and for a long time. But I'm not scared to say, to tell prospects or customers who are thinking about data vault, say, well, tell me what you're trying to solve, and they explain what they're trying to do. And I think, well, I don't think you should build a data vault. It's too complex for what you want to do. You're not going to get the business value. At the same time, what actually sparks that need to restructure or to maybe build a data vault? To me, if like you guys have said, if you've built all these pipelines and everything is delivering value, but then you start seeing the technical debt and it starts to cost. At what point do you go, we need to change what we're doing? You know, is it when the cost of getting to that analytics is higher than the value it brings, or what is it that sparks that need to change things? And then as an extension of that, how do you get the funding for that if this is costing you so much?
I think that's a difficult equation to balance, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Because the more you embrace the idea of, using that example, well, maybe you don't need a data vault right now, right? But then 2 years from now, they might say like, damn, we wish we had done a data vault because now we're running into the problems that it would have been useful to have that. But like, we didn't
Yes,
choose to
yes.
do that back then. That's, I don't know. This is the equation. I think we're all looking for this holy grail, which is like, well, can't we just build things agilely, organically for the use case at hand? And as it becomes important to treat semantics and organize our knowledge in a smarter way and repave the roads in a smarter way, that we can just do that without like having too much of a tax, without having to remigrate our entire stack to something else. I don't know. Do we have that knowledge?
No.
That holy grail?
I think it ends up being part of the of it's a cultural aspect and an incentives. And I think one of the things that I was this talk that I gave, I've been building more on it, like why and how to invest in semantics and knowledge. And one of those things is saying, look, we need to have a culture of reuse. So we need to make like we need to
So
have
you're
a
saying more
culture.
than a technology problem. This is a
cultural.
people process problem.
It's a people process problem for sure. We should have a culture of saying we always need to strive that 1 + 1 is greater than 2. So if I'm going to do one unit of work, it is in our culture, in our DNA, to saying, hey, this work that we're doing, I bet that other people could find value out of it too. Who do we know around us that can kind of take some value, can get some extra input to make sure that what we're doing here could be possibly reused, even though we don't know if they're going to need it or not, just because we never know what's going to happen tomorrow. We're not incentivized for that. That may not be our culture. But I think we need to have that cultural shift saying, hey, it's the what ifs of serendipity that are going to provide value, because we do care about what can happen tomorrow. The issue is that a lot of our incentives are for fast right now, today, and I don't care about tomorrow. I don't care about your problem. I'm incentivized in my silo, and I think the organizations that I highly admire are the ones that have a culture of innovation across different silos, that they're incentivizing that.
I think to add to that, what I find, working with a lot of customers, different levels of customers, some are greenfield, some are existing, and some inherit what they have and say, well, what do we have here? What can we do? What should we be doing? Is execution. Like a lot of customers, a lot of prospects look for guidance on how to get going. What is it what are the best? I always hear the words best practice. Hey Pat, can you tell us what the best practice of this is? And I'm thinking, well, I'm glad you said best practice, because I was going to give you any practice. But I'm so glad that you said best practice, and therefore I'm going to go through my drawer of practices and pick the best one. This is what you should use. But that is what's missing, because I think a lot of teams come from different experiences and different levels of skill and so on. And maybe even data analysts are asked to be data engineers, or data engineers are asked to be data modelers. And when they get into this space of here's my target, my end goal, my business value I'm trying to get to, they revert to blogs or or try to get consultancies in to do it for them, and then they end up not learning anything. And then it's the old Steve Jobs consulting equation. Like, well, the consultant doesn't really have skin in the game because they're not accountable. They're consulting. You know, a big part of it, I think, is setting up these repeatable patterns that work. You know, and should be technology agnostic. And that's why I said earlier that when you're building something out like an enterprise, let's call it enterprise architecture, you should not be doing it alone. The data vault projects that I found the most successful was when we had somebody from like a enterprise modeling or enterprise architecture perspective having input, direct input, accountable input into what we're building.
This is great. You know what? So there, I agree that there's this lack of best practices, and you know what? I think also there are these existing best practices, and frankly, people may consider them a little bit out. They may consider them outdated because they're written 10, 15, 20 years ago. They're not outdated. They're still valid. And I think maybe we just kind of need to barely rewrite them so people can say, oh, this was published last week or last month, and then they'll go read it probably, right? Which this is just actually a shout out. And I'm going to kind of just throw out some, like, I know Joe Reese is writing his data modeling book. And I think there is an opportunity here to have some sort of a conference or meetings around data modeling specifically, where it shouldn't just be about just giving talks about what we're doing. Like, I think there should be a lot about like people having back and forth conversations, having office hours, saying, "Hey, here's what I'm doing." Like, let's be comfortable, sharing what we're doing, so we can learn about the patterns. Like, hey, this could be improved this way, and so forth. So, this is what I'm realizing out of this conversation. That there's a huge opportunity for community around here. That is
execution
that is missing here.
Yeah.
One more thing before we get into our lightning round, which is we haven't even touched about this. We've mentioned a little bit, so we've talked more about data vault. You have a perspective of how data vault ties into knowledge graphs, and I don't want to chime in, because this is why I talk about. You've been looking at this, you've been reading around this stuff. I want to hear your perspective of how this evolves.
In particular for knowledge graphs?
Yeah. So everything we've talked about, like what you've seen about data vault, and how does this combine and complement with knowledge graphs? How are you seeing this?
So the thing I said earlier about, if you provide a knowledge graph with crap data, then of what worth is the knowledge graph? Is what I think Data Vault, one particular of Data Vault, could be very good at and useful for knowledge graphs. And I've seen, particularly out of Europe, where some consultancies have come up with their own methodologies on how to solve this complexity. One of them speaks to the enterprise view of your software, right? Because all software is automation for your business processes. But they either bought off the shelf or you build them yourselves, right? Both have pros and cons on what you end up with. But how do we ensure that we're talking about the same business object across your software landscape? How does that happen? It is bigger than just a data model. It's bigger than just a data architecture. It is an enterprise vision where, okay, system A and system B are talking about the same guy. They're using the same business key. Great. There's nothing for us to do here. Hold on. System A and system B have got two different business keys for the same business object. We have a problem. Which is the correct business key? Only the business can tell us, right? Like you wouldn't send an account statement to your customer, to utilities customer, and say, by the way, you have these three account numbers. And the reason why we have these three account numbers is because they came from three different systems. No customer should ever experience that. We have to solve that in our data vault or in our enterprise vision. And the last case is what I talk about is also, what if you've got the same business key from two different systems, but they're actually different business objects? We need to solve that as well. So before you even get to have a foundation or populating a knowledge graph, You need to solve what is the right business key for each business entity. And I think Data Vault has the patterns that is a great foundation for a knowledge graph.
So your last sentence, I think that's spot on. The data vault has the right kind of foundations for a knowledge graph. And I think if I look at it, if you are building, a data vault inside of a particular database, that's equivalent of building a knowledge graph. Now, I think knowledge graphs expand because specifically if you're building things using the open web standards like RDF and OWL, it's like now you're thinking about a decentralized, you can connect. So now this key can go across databases, which effectively you can say if I were to go build my different, call it my, I'm going to now use this interchangeably, my graph for my data vault inside of a relational database, and I have multiple databases, and now you think about specifically the open semantic web standards of RDF and OWL, like that can actually connect the things very nicely one-to-one of what you have in that database. So through my conversations with you, Patrick, I've realized like it's just two independent communities that have come up with basically the exact same thing, except one is more from a very specific relational database perspective.
Yeah, we got to make this work in a relational
and
database.
The other one,
yeah.
the knowledge graph, which comes from the semantic. I was thinking about it from a web perspective, but it maps 90-ish% together. Like even what you just said right now about the keys, like what is the equivalent for the knowledge graph for using RDF and now in the semantic web? It's URIs, it's identifiers. Like data integration becomes so much easier, almost quote unquote for free, if you think about your identifiers from the beginning. But we don't think about identifiers from the beginning. We don't think about the business concept from the beginning. But the moment that you do, all of this ends up just much more easy and understandable. So at the end of the day, this is like we're our long lost siblings.
Well, one of the things I was also thinking about is like, why are we doing, while we are doing knowledge graphs, is, the amount of predictive outputs that you can get from a knowledge graph, like coming up with, actually, these guys are related because they are, on the same social media platform, or they're friends or whatever. Why couldn't that be fed back into a data vault and opened up to the rest of the analytics community in an enterprise? Why not? And that's what I said earlier, raw vault, business vault, right? So raw vault is taking your enterprise landscape of existing software and going to hubs, links, and satellites, repeatable table structures. Our business vault is sparsely modeled, where we have a business case that can't be solved by a source system. Therefore, we do it in some business rule engine, which is either SQL or Python or whatever it is. But the outcome, we persist as a business vault, link, or satellite. Why couldn't a knowledge graph output of whatever analytics you're doing or predictive analytics be fed back into a data vault and opened up to a community who's using BI dashboards on top of it?
100%. And I think this is just going to be just different ways of physically representing things.
Yes.
All right.
Shall we?
Lightning round questions. We got four here. We're ready. Question number 1. Do you need to be careful about how you model your data warehouse from day one, or is that overthinking it?
I think you should think about modeling everything in what we call a steel thread. So careful for sure. Repeatable pattern, easy. So for your data architecture, steel thread says, how do we land the data? How do we build our integration? And how do we present it for people to actually use it, so you have business value as quickly as possible? And concurrently already start thinking about enterprise vision for everything. Not a boil the ocean approach. You do it in layers. As you're building more and more into your steel threads, you end up with a steel wool, you end up with a steel jersey, and you end up with a hard rock data warehouse.
I like that. I feel like in a few episodes now we talk about iron threads. You got steel threads. What was the other kind
there
of
is
thing
another
that
one.
The gold thread or something like
something
that?
Yeah. This has been like
two episodes ago or something like that. Yeah. Hey, we're all building.
People
we're all
love
building
quotes,
that.
and then all these threads come together. They're a fabric and a mesh.
It all becomes a meshy fabric, right?
Oh, mesh.
Right.
Oh, okay.
Anyway, we didn't even talk about mesh today, but all right. So second lightning round question: is AI going to make it easier to do this work of re-architecting and refactoring and aligning around the business objects? Because I can also see the opposite, right? Probably AI is going to make it easier than ever to build 100,000 DBT pipelines. So is it going to help make it easier?
It's a great question because AI, the way Gen AI is developed today, as far as I've seen it, is built on what it's seen before, right? And it mixes the results together because it's got very close vector similarities between words and meanings and stuff. Definitely, it's gonna help. Hopefully, not building 10,000 pipelines, but maybe even help like, oh, but you've done this before here. Why aren't you using that? Like the AI at the moment is too polite. I think AI should go, hold on, what are you trying to do here? You can use that. Why aren't you using that?
I like that.
Maybe specific prompts. Please be rude to me. Tell me what I should be doing. Something like that. But it's still augmenting what you and I do for a living. One of the things that I guess, I mean, just thinking about AI in general, like, is it going to take over all our jobs and that kind of thing? One thing that you can't do with AI is that you can't sue it, right?
So you can't sue it.
If AI gets something wrong, it's not really accountable. It's the person who ran the AI who's accountable.
So in that sense, you lose a little something in that.
All right,
AI is a great tool. I think it's I use it day to day. It's awesome, but at the end of the day, you're still going to be accountable for what you use it for.
Yep.
All right, next question: is unstructured data, especially in the light of all this AI workloads, changing the way we think about data models, or does it just fit right in?
I think it fits right in because it doesn't matter what data that you query or that you're after, unstructured, structured, or semi-structured. Don't tell me that there's no business key or there's no business entity. If you're bringing in data that doesn't talk about a business entity that your enterprise cares about, why are we pulling this data in?
That's a great perspective.
Yep. That's great. I love that.
All right,
Final lightning round question. What's more important? Companies need more architects and modelers in their data and IT organizations. So that's option one. Or option two, do existing people need to learn more about architecture and modeling?
Well, I mean, the second one leads to the first one, doesn't it? I mean, that a lot of this stuff is starting to be automated, and there's a podcast, another YouTube video I watch like twice a week, where there's more and more automation going into code development and so on. And I watched one this morning where a guy got kicked out of some university in the US because he developed an AI tool that lets you cheat your technical interviews. It helps you cheat. So as you're getting asked these questions, it's coming up with the answers saying, say this, say this, say this.
Yeah. It's like a little tutor hanging out in the corner, right?
Well, I mean, and he's a university student, so he knew exactly what he was doing, right? It's like, oh, this is going to help everybody, and it's going to make me famous. But then he got kicked out, so I don't know if he saw that one coming. But architecture, because you need that cognitive load. At the end of the day, it's not going to matter what language or tool you use it in, but you stick to the same principles. Today, that's curation, getting the data right, getting the semantics right, getting what business objects are right. Tomorrow, it could be something else, but it doesn't matter what tool is sitting underneath, as long as you understand how to bring that stuff together. I guess that, in a way, makes it different between somebody who's been in the industry for 20 years, somebody who's new, is that, okay, you have the experience, you've seen this before. Sometimes it's difficult to change your mindset because modern architectures are going a certain path. but it's also easier to understand why we do it in the first place. And you don't end up going back to what you did before 20 years ago because you've seen it before. Whereas a lot of the lessons I think that we've learned, 20-year experience, are new ideas today for some reason. Yeah.
I like that principled approach.
So, Tim, takeaway time. Take us away, Tim.
All right. Well, we started with the question, Patrick, of vaults, knowledge graphs. What is this? What is this all about? Give us the honest, no BS about all this. And you said it's really all about data modeling, right? That's what it is in general. It's about data modeling. If you have a data landscape that isn't managed, how useful is your data really? Right? How can you really know that you're efficiently and simply getting the right business results? And you talked about cognitive load, right? And actually said, like in education, right? They're talking about it in the schools. It lays the foundation of how to teach the concepts to the students. You got to keep it simple to 3 or 4 core concepts, build it out from there. And similarly, with our data architectures, what are the core concepts that matter the most to your business? The business objects, the business entities. And what are the, you mentioned later on in the podcast about the steel threads, right? What are the steel threads that tie this together for your particular use cases? If you've got situations where you've got queries that are running for 2 days, resulting in no results, you got to ask a question. Why are we doing this? There's something wrong happening here. And you said that the basics of data modeling are really business entities and relationships. And, spoiler alert, there's data vaults and knowledge graphs, and they both care a lot about these 2 things, right? So we asked, what is a data vault? And you said it's the layer of bringing your business structures into a pattern-based model. And when people ask sometimes hey, why should I do a data vault? Sometimes the right answer back to them is, no, why should you do a data vault? Right? You should flip it back onto them because ultimately, why are you choosing these architectures? You have to do it with an idea in mind of why it's valuable and how it's going to drive value for your organization. And you can't do it alone. Right? Top down is important and collaborative is important because you need to really focus on the business relationships and how these things connect. Contrast that with, bottoms up thousands of DBT pipelines and things like that, right? You need to figure out a better way. Data modeling is about maximizing. Oh, go ahead. Yeah.
No,
you want to add a commentary? Go for it.
The top down thing is 100%. And what I said earlier, you'll find a wide variety of business customers or customers in general, different experience levels and so on. But there is some good literature out there that you just pick up a book and you read up how can I solve this for customer X? And I'll give you an example. I started with a customer west coast of Australia, didn't really map the business concepts with what they're doing from the data architecture perspective. And I picked up a good book from forget his surname. His first name is Ross. He's like a business rule guru. He's on the internet. He's publishing lots of stuff. But he's one book about business concept modeling. I took that and I sat with the product manager. I said, let's do this. And for the developers, they're like, this is brilliant. I now know why we have claims, we have accounts, how they're related, and how they come together in our data landscape. I have a better idea on how to deliver these pipelines.
Yeah, exactly. This is why knowledge is power. You now understand what the business is doing, how it's related to it.
And we are visual creatures. So the idea of relating boxes together and just not
bubbles and lines.
So
right.
But gave us a good idea on how to build out.
But semantic models are not the full answer. That's a bit of a Band-Aid on it, right? There's the one thing that we talked about. If you're doing it the wrong way, it can be like a Potemkin village, right? So, and for those who are curious more about what that is, look that up because it's a cool analogy. But Juan, what were your big takeaways?
So back on the semantic layer, where we're talking about how that evolution that it goes to from is it just for the BI, the fact and dimensions, and we're talking about how that is extending to anything across your relational databases and unstructured and so forth. So that's the evolution that's happening right there. You brought up also, how do we know if it's right? This answer that we're getting is right. That's where the knowledge comes in. That's where the semantics, because we need the curation around this stuff, right? And I think that's going to be the change, especially with AI. we talked about. I love we had this whole discussion about the analogies of like of building your cities and your car, your streets, and all that stuff. Right?
Yeah, that was a good one.
And I think that was great because you're saying, wow, now that I built this, am I going to go out? Am I going to go revisit what I did and kind of suggest we're going to go tear down this building and add
You
this?
shouldn't build a highway when you have a little village,
right?
right? But later on, you need a highway, right?
So, so this is one of the things that it was a great analogy. But hey, the lessons learned is that for a new city you're doing, you now know what you should be doing, what you should not be doing around that. We should really be thinking about the data vaults, the knowledge of semantics from the beginning and as you go. I love how we talked about the equations of managing technical debt. At some point that you've built all this stuff, you're like, wait, to get this stuff working, it's going to cost more than the value of the analytics we're getting out. So therefore, it's not even worth to go do this, right? So this is an equation we need to go figure out, and it's tricky to go figure that out. Best practices. We need more of these best practices. But you brought up some of like, what are the repeatable patterns that we know that are working? You should not be doing data modeling alone. You need to have enterprise input that they're actually accountable for. And I think what I'm kind of a takeaway I'm having is like we should actually organize some sort of meetups and or conferences or events and stuff around data modeling, and actually have office hours where people can kind of share their stuff around. And I think we wrapped up with saying like the relationship between data vault and data and knowledge graphs. My position is like they're like the long lost siblings, because all the things that we think about, they're so related. Think about the keys. Think about the data, the business entities, the relationship between them. We've just been doing this independently, and I think now there's just an opportunity to kind of do this more together.
They're always about business objects, business entities, and relationships, and the descriptive details about it. I think Graph fits a very important use case, and Vault fits a very important use case, but they can be complementary too.
Mm-hmm. Anything we missed on our takeaway?
For an hour, that's it. I have to wait until 12 o'clock before I can relax.
All right, to wrap up, 3 questions for you. What's your advice about data, about life, whatever? Second, who should we invite next? And third, what are the resources you follow?
Don't get too caught up in what was done in the past. Everybody's got a fresh perspective. Everybody's got their own experiences bringing to a project. Be patient. But at the end of the day, everybody involved in a data architecture or data analytics project are really after the same thing, business value. Sometimes your ideas won't get into the final product, but that's okay. It's the person who really makes the decisions are the ones that are most accountable, and you never know what pressures they're under to get to that value. So as a consultant, as a guy who sees a lot of customers, I'll bring my expertise, but and I'll reason why I think one is better than the other. But ultimately, you're there to support your customer. So
that's a very thoughtful and empathetic perspective.
Yeah.
I appreciate that. Yeah.
Oh, you have to be, right. I mean, I'm not in charge of their budget. They are. So
yeah. Who should we invite
that's
next?
the way it works. What was the second question?
Yeah. Who should we invite next?
I don't know. You had a list actually. You published on LinkedIn.
Well, those are already next. So
Yeah, I know. So you're fishing for ideas who to bring on. I'd like to see more of what Ole is doing. The MetaGrid stuff. That looks interesting. I don't know if you've got him lined up already.
Well, he's already been on here twice, so we got to get.
Oh, he has.
I think maybe this is a call for if you think you're starting to do stuff around MetaGrid, reach out to Juan and myself. Yeah.
Now, how about this? This is a good
putting
one.
it in practice, right?
Yeah, let's talk about people who say they're doing MetaGrid and it's not always.
Yeah.
So more of those. Okay.
So
finally,
we want to see real use cases and then really interrogate. Say, what worked well, what didn't. What are the challenges and what you shouldn't do, or what are the red flags? You see this and like, oh, hold back.
Yeah, I like that.
Or actually, even another step. Hey, customer, you want to do MetaGrid? Why? Okay, you shouldn't do it because you don't fit the profile, for example.
And then finally, what are the resources you follow? people, blogs, books, magazines, conferences. I don't know.
Conferences, Snowflake blogs mostly because that's part of my job. A lot of people like yourselves who publish things about knowledge because that is the layer between AI and the landscape of data. Obviously, Ole, Joe Reyes, all that stuff. Try to get it in before the day starts, and I continue working with customers.
All right. Well,
That's
Patrick, this has been a fantastic conversation, which is hitting a lot
Yeah.
of things that we're really excited. Next week, we'll be live again, and we'll be with Hala Nelson. We'll talk about digital twins and her next upcoming book too. And with
sounds
that,
awesome.
cheers,
Patrick, what
Patrick.
an amazing conversation. Cheers.
Thank